There is a tiredness that does not come from work. It doesn't come from a lack of sleep. It is a quiet, deep exhaustion that lives in your bones, a weariness that settles in your spirit after you have been responsible for one too many emotions that were not your own. You know this feeling. It's the silence in the car after an argument you had to absorb. It's the forced smile you hold in place while someone complains for an hour, draining the very air from the room. It is the weight of being the designated, understanding one, the person everyone turns to because you are so good at holding space, so patient, so kind. But no one ever asks who holds space for you. You have become a beautiful, comfortable room for others to enter, a place where they can leave their emotional mud on the floor, spill their anxieties on the furniture, and know that when they return, the room will have magically cleaned itself. They find solace in your calm, your stability, your seemingly endless capacity to listen. But you no longer live in this room. You have become the wallpaper, the quiet fixture, the atmosphere. You are everywhere and nowhere at all. And the room, your own soul, is beginning to feel cold and empty. This is the great painful paradox of kindness without boundaries. You gave what you thought was your greatest gift, your empathy. But in return, you feel invisible. You offered warmth and were left with a chill. You tried to be a good person, and now you are haunted by a quiet, gnawing resentment you dare not speak aloud. And the most confusing part is the guilt, a guilt that whispers, "You should be better than this. You should be more giving. Why does it hurt to do what is right?" This is the moment the journey inward must begin, because the pain is not a sign that your kindness is wrong. It is a desperate signal from your soul that your kindness has been turned into a tool of self-betrayal. And the path back to yourself, the path to rebuilding a trust you have lost in your own heart, begins with understanding the psychological mechanism that led you here. On the surface, the story is simple. You are an empathic person who has been taken for granted. You've encountered selfish people, perhaps even those with narcissistic patterns, who saw your generosity as a resource to be exploited. And while this is true, it is only half the story. It is the external part of the dynamic. To truly heal, to truly reclaim the trust in your own goodness, we must look at the internal part. We must look at what is happening inside of you. This is where the work of Carl Jung becomes not an academic theory, but a lamp in a dark room. Jung spoke of the persona. The persona is the mask we present to the world. It is the version of ourselves we want others to see and accept. We all have one. The successful professional, the rebellious artist, the witty charmer. It is a necessary tool for social navigation. But for the person who has been taught that their worth comes from their usefulness to others, the persona becomes something more. It becomes the mask of the good person, the helper, the rescuer, the peacekeeper. This isn't just a role you play, it becomes your identity. Your ego fuses with this mask. You are not just acting kind. You believe, on a fundamental level, that you are your kindness. Your entire sense of self-worth is invested in maintaining this persona. And this persona is rewarded. People praise you for being selfless. They admire your patience. They depend on your strength. This validation feels like love. It feels like connection. So you double down. You give more. You tolerate more. You explain more. You absorb more. You keep the mask of the serene, understanding helper perfectly in place, even as behind it, you are starting to suffocate. But here is the deeper, more uncomfortable truth. Psychology, especially Jungian psychology, teaches us that the psyche always seeks balance. Whatever we consciously overexpress, its opposite grows in the unconscious. The more you identify with the saintly persona of the good person, the larger and darker your shadow becomes. The shadow, in Jungian terms, is not evil. It is simply the parts of ourselves that we have repressed, disowned, and refused to acknowledge. It is everything we have decided is not me. And for the person wearing the mask of perpetual kindness, the shadow contains all the feelings that threaten the persona. It is your anger. It is your frustration. It is the exhaustion you pretend not to feel. It is the raw, unfiltered scream of, "What about me?" It is the part of you that feels used, resentful, and utterly unappreciated. It is the part of you that secretly fantasizes about walking away, about saying a firm, unapologetic no. You spend years pushing this shadow down. When you feel a flicker of resentment, you tell yourself you are being selfish. When you feel exhausted by someone's drama, You tell yourself you need to be more compassionate. You police your own thoughts, judging any negative feeling as a moral failure. You are not just hiding the shadow from others, you are hiding it from yourself. This is the core of the self-betrayal. It's not just that someone else is crossing your boundaries, it's that you are betraying your own internal signals again and again. Your body screams no, but your persona smiles and says, "Of course, how can I help?" Your spirit feels drained, but your persona says, "I'm fine, don't worry about me." Each time you do this, you drive a wedge between your conscious mind and your authentic self. You are teaching yourself, on a cellular level, not to trust your own feelings. Your intuition becomes a muted whisper you can no longer hear over the loud demands of your persona. And then, the system breaks. It has to. The unconscious cannot be suppressed forever. The shadow, starved for attention, begins to leak out. It doesn't appear as healthy anger because you have no practice with that. Instead, it seeps out sideways. It emerges as passive aggression you don't recognize in yourself. It becomes a cynical edge to your humor. It manifests as chronic fatigue, anxiety, or a strange, unexplainable sadness that colors your world gray. You find yourself becoming irritable with the very people you are trying to help, and then feel immense guilt for it. This is the point of collapse. The persona of the good person is cracking under the strain. The energy required to keep the shadow locked in the basement has become too much. You are not just tired of others. You are tired of the performance. You are tired of yourself. And in this painful, confusing crisis, a question finally surfaces. Who am I if I am not the helper? This question is terrifying because your entire identity has been built on that role. To let go of it feels like letting go of your worth, your purpose, your very self. And this is where we find the root of the pattern, what Jung would call a complex. A complex is an emotionally charged cluster of thoughts, memories, and beliefs in the unconscious, usually formed in childhood. For many who overgive, it is a worth complex or an abandonment complex. At some early point in life, you learned an unconscious equation. My survival and belonging depend on my ability to be useful, pleasant, and not a burden. I must anticipate others' needs and meet them, so that I will be kept safe, so that I will be loved, so that I will not be abandoned. A child who grows up in an environment where a parent is emotionally volatile, absent, or narcissistic learns this very quickly. They become a tiny emotional detective, constantly scanning the parent's mood, learning to be whatever the parent needs them to be. The quiet one, the successful one, the funny one, the caretaker. The child's own needs are put aside. Their authentic feelings are deemed dangerous or inconvenient. They learn that good means compliant, and love means conditional approval for playing their role correctly. This pattern doesn't just disappear when you grow up. It becomes the blueprint for all your relationships. You unconsciously seek out dynamics that allow you to replay this role because it is familiar. It feels like love because it is the only model of connection you have ever known. You are drawn to people who need rescuing, to partners who are emotionally unavailable, to friends who are perpetual victims, because they activate your complex. They allow you to put on the familiar, comfortable persona of the helper and feel, for a moment, that you are earning your worth. A manipulative or narcissistic pattern is drawn to this like a moth to a flame. They sense someone whose boundaries are porous, someone who equates self-sacrifice with love. It is a perfect, tragic lock and key. They need a constant source of validation, attention, and emotional regulation, and you have been trained your entire life to provide it. But the pain you feel now is not a sign of your failure. It is a sign of your soul's success. It is the cry of the authentic self, the part of you that was buried long ago, saying, enough. The exhaustion, the resentment, the burnout. This is not your weakness. This is your strength, finally rising up. It is the energy of your own life force, refusing to be siphoned off any longer. The first step in rebuilding self-trust is to reframe this experience. The anger you feel is not a sin. It is sacred information. It is the guardian of your boundaries. It is the part of you that loves you enough to say, this is not right. For years, you have treated this anger like an enemy. The journey now is to learn to see it as an ally. This does not mean you must become an angry, bitter person. That is what the ego fears. It thinks the only alternative to being a saint is to be a monster. This is a false choice. Integrating the shadow does not mean letting it run the show. It means bringing it out of the basement and into the light of your consciousness. You listen to its message. You honor its truth. The anger, when listened to, simply says, "My energy is finite. My well-being matters. I will no longer set myself on fire to keep others warm." When you begin this process, the first thing you will encounter is a tidal wave of guilt. The moment you say your first small no, the moment you choose not to answer a demanding text immediately, the moment you decide to spend an evening alone instead of rushing to solve someone else's crisis, the guilt will be immense. This guilt is the complex screaming for survival. It is the old programming kicking in, warning you, "Danger! You are being selfish. You will be rejected. You will be abandoned. You will no longer be the good person." This guilt feels like a confirmation that you are doing something wrong. But this is the most critical turning point. You must learn to see this guilt not as a stop sign, but as a landmark. It is proof that you are finally leaving the old territory. The guilt is a withdrawal symptom from your addiction to the persona. It is the ghost of the old pattern, trying to pull you back into the familiar, comfortable prison of self-abandonment. Breathe through it. Acknowledge it. Say to yourself, there is the guilt. I was told this would show up. This is the feeling of me choosing myself. This feels unfamiliar, but it is not wrong. The first few times, it will be almost unbearable. But with practice, you will build a new tolerance. Not a tolerance for disrespect, but a tolerance for the discomfort of your own liberation. Rebuilding self-trust is not a grand, dramatic act. It is a series of small, quiet choices. It is the choice to notice when your shoulders tense up as a certain person's name appears on your phone, and to decide not to answer right away. It is noticing the feeling of being drained after a conversation, and making a mental note to limit contact with that person. It is learning to listen to the language of your own body again. For years, your body has been sending you signals, and your mind has been overriding them. The knot in your stomach, the tightness in your chest, the headache that appears after a certain interaction. This is not random noise. This is your deepest intelligence communicating with you. Your body knows the truth long before your conscious mind is willing to accept it. Trusting yourself again means learning to honor these physical signals as valid, important data. Imagine that empty room that was once your soul. Reclaiming yourself is the process of beginning to furnish it for yourself again. At first, it might just be a single chair, just for you. A moment of quiet, a book you want to read, a walk you take alone. You are not filling the room to entertain guests anymore. You are making it a home for yourself. You stop asking, "What do they need from me?" And you start asking, "What do I need for myself right now?" The answer might be simple: a cup of tea, 5 minutes of silence, a good cry. By meeting these small, authentic needs, you are sending a powerful message to your unconscious. I am here. I am listening. My needs matter. This is how the foundation of self-trust is rebuilt, brick by quiet brick. As you do this, something strange will happen. The people who were drawn to your lack of boundaries will begin to react. They may call you selfish. They may accuse you of changing. They may try to manipulate you with guilt, saying things like, "You used to be so much nicer." And when they say this, you must hear what they are really saying. They are saying, "You used to be so much more convenient for me. Your lack of boundaries served my needs perfectly. Now that you have them, you are no longer useful in the same way." Their reaction is not a judgment on your character. It is a confirmation of your progress. You have successfully changed the lock on the door of that room. Only those who can respect the space and the person living in it are now welcome. If this journey of understanding the masks we wear and the shadows we carry names something you have never been able to say out loud, take a moment to acknowledge that. This recognition is the first light in the dark. The path is not about becoming cold or unfeeling. That is a common fear. The fear is that if you let go of the good person persona, you will swing to the other extreme and become a narcissist yourself. This is the ego's black and white thinking. The goal is not to stop being kind. The goal is to integrate your kindness with wisdom. True, integrated kindness is discerning. It comes from a full cup, not an empty one. It knows that you cannot give what you do not have. It understands that a no, spoken from a place of self-respect, is more honest and ultimately more loving than a yes, spoken from a place of obligation and resentment. A person operating from this integrated place can be incredibly generous, but their giving doesn't deplete them. Their boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are fences that define their own sacred space. They can feel empathy for another's pain, without taking it on as their own responsibility to fix. They can sit with someone in their darkness without letting that darkness extinguish their own light. They are no longer a public utility. They are a well-tended private garden, and they choose when to open the gate. This is the process Carl Jung called individuation. It is the journey of becoming an individual, no longer divided against yourself. It is the process of withdrawing your projections, taking back your power, and becoming the whole, authentic person you were always meant to be, before the world taught you to be someone else. It means making peace with your own shadow. It means accepting that you are a complex human being who is capable of both great generosity and fierce self-protection. It means understanding that your anger is not your enemy, but a vital part of your life force. It means forgiving yourself for the years you spent betraying your own soul, because you were doing the best you could with the tools you had at the time. So, how do you know if you are regaining your self-trust? It won't be a lightning bolt. It will be quiet. It will be the day you state a need without a long, apologetic explanation. It will be the moment you feel a pang of guilt and can smile at it, recognizing it as an old friend you no longer need to entertain. It will be the feeling of peace you experience when you are alone, a feeling that is no longer tinged with the anxiety of what you should be doing for someone else. You will find yourself less interested in fixing people and more interested in connecting with them. You will notice that the people who drain you begin to drift away, almost effortlessly, while people who respect your energy are drawn closer. The frantic need for external validation quiets down, replaced by a steady, internal sense of your own worth. You will look in the mirror one day and not just see the tired mask you have been wearing. You will see your own eyes looking back at you, and you will feel a sense of homecoming. The room is no longer empty, you are in it, and for the first time in a long time, it feels like home. You are no longer just the atmosphere. You are the one who decides when to open the windows and let the sun in. My kindness no longer requires my self-betrayal. This declaration, my kindness no longer requires my self-betrayal, is not an endpoint. It is the beginning of a new life. And this new life is lived, first and foremost, in the body. For years, your body has been the silent battlefield for this conflict. It has been storing the memory of every overridden instinct, every swallowed no, every moment of faked enthusiasm. This is not a metaphor, it is physiology. When you consistently put others' needs and emotional states ahead of your own safety and well-being, your nervous system learns a specific pattern. It learns the fawn response. This is the state of chronic appeasement. It is the held breath when a difficult person enters the room. It is the slight, unconscious tension in your jaw and shoulders, ready to absorb a blow or offer a placating smile. It is a constant, low-level state of vigilance, a hyper-awareness of others' moods that you have mistaken for empathy, but which is actually a trauma response. Your body has been braced for impact for years, sometimes decades. This is the source of that bone-deep weariness. Your muscles are tired from being perpetually tensed. Your adrenal system is exhausted from being on high alert. You have been running an internal marathon every single day, just to maintain the peace and manage the emotional environment around you. As you begin to reclaim yourself, the healing will be felt here first, in your physical self. It may be confusing at first. As you start setting boundaries and choosing yourself, you might not feel a rush of power. You might feel a strange, unsettling release of that chronic tension. This can manifest as trembling or shaking that seems to come from nowhere. It can be a sudden, deep need for sleep, as your body finally gets permission to stand down from high alert. It can also come as tears, not the desperate, pleading tears of the past, but tears of release. You might find yourself crying after a perfectly normal day, and you won't know why. It is your body, finally letting go of the stored grief of 1,000 tiny self-abandonments. These are the moments to be incredibly gentle with yourself. This is your nervous system rewiring itself. It is the physical process of your body learning that it is safe now. It no longer has to fawn to survive. It can simply be. You will notice your breath. One day, you will take a full, deep breath that reaches all the way into your belly, and you will realize you haven't breathed like that in years. That breath is the feeling of your soul returning to your body. It is the physical anchor of self-trust. When you can breathe deeply in the presence of another person, it means you are no longer bracing for impact. You are grounded in your own space. This physical homecoming allows for a deeper layer of psychological integration. For as long as you identified as the good person, you needed a villain. When you disown your own capacity for anger, selfishness, or indifference, your shadow, you don't destroy those traits, you project them onto others. The narcissist, the difficult friend, the demanding parent, they become the screen for everything you cannot accept in yourself. They are all bad so that you can remain all good. This creates a powerful, addictive, and ultimately false drama. It keeps you locked in a cycle of reaction, forever defined by your opposition to them. But as you integrate your own shadow, something miraculous happens. You take your projections back. You acknowledge that you too have a capacity for anger. You too have needs that can feel selfish. You too can be indifferent to things that do not concern you. By accepting these parts of yourself, you diffuse their power. And in doing so, you take the power away from the other. The narcissist is no longer a mythic monster who holds the key to your suffering. You begin to see them with a clear, almost detached compassion. You see them not as your evil opposite, but as a deeply wounded, dysfunctional human being, trapped in their own patterns, just as you were. You can feel sorry for them, but you no longer feel responsible for them. Their drama loses its pull. You don't need to fight them. You don't need to fix them. You don't even need to hate them. You can simply walk away. You can put your energy back into your own life. This is true freedom. It's not about winning a battle against them. It's about realizing you are not even on the same battlefield anymore. As this integration deepens, new, more subtle signs of self-trust will emerge. Your inner world begins to change. You will notice a shift from reactive boundaries to proactive self-care. You no longer wait until you are completely drained and resentful to say no. Instead, you begin to structure your days and weeks in a way that naturally preserves your energy. You schedule quiet time. You choose social interactions that feel nourishing. Your life stops being a series of defensive maneuvers and starts becoming a conscious creation. Your inner monologue will transform. The harsh, critical voice that once shamed you for any selfish impulse, the voice of the complex, is gradually replaced by a warmer, more compassionate inner voice. It sounds less like a judge and more like a wise, loving parent. When you feel tired, it doesn't say you should push through. It says, it looks like we need to rest. When you feel angry, it doesn't say you're a bad person. It says, what is this anger telling us we need? This inner dialogue is the very essence of self-trust. You are finally parenting yourself in the way you always needed. And then comes the most beautiful sign of all, the return of playfulness. For years, all your psychic energy was consumed by the performance of the persona and the suppression of the shadow. There was nothing left over for joy. But now, with that energy freed up, you will feel a lightness you had forgotten was possible, a desire to be creative, to laugh at silly things, to be spontaneous. This isn't frivolous. It is the hallmark of a healed psyche. It is the life force, no longer siphoned off, bubbling up from within. Eventually, after you have practiced on the small things, you will face a late practical test. It won't be a clear-cut case of abuse from a toxic person. It will be far more subtle, and therefore far more challenging. It will likely come from someone you love and respect, a parent, a sibling, a cherished old friend. They will come to you in a moment of genuine crisis, with a need that pulls directly on the old strings of your helper persona. Their pain will be real. Their need will be legitimate. The temptation to fall back into the old role, to fix, to rescue, to absorb all their pain, to sacrifice your own plans and well-being on the altar of their crisis will be immense. This is the final exam. Passing this test does not mean turning them away with a cold no. That is the old black and white thinking. Integration means you have more options. You can show up with immense compassion, but without the compulsion to rescue. You can listen deeply, offering the gift of your presence, without taking on their problem as your own. You might say, that sounds incredibly difficult. I am holding so much space for you in my heart. I can sit here and listen for an hour, and then I have a commitment to myself I need to honor. In that moment, you are doing three things simultaneously. You are validating their pain, you are offering genuine connection, and you are holding a firm boundary that honors your own life. The ability to do all three, and to walk away after that hour feeling not guilt, but a clean, quiet peace, is the sign that you have truly come home to yourself. You have mastered the art of compassionate detachment. And so, we return to that tiredness that lives in the bones. One day, you will notice its absence. In its place, you will not feel a manic, forced energy, but a quiet, grounded solidity. A sense of being rooted in the earth of your own being. It is the feeling of your own presence, filling up that room that was once so empty. This journey is not about arriving at a perfect, healed state. It is a lifelong practice of returning to the body, returning to the breath, returning to the quiet, true voice within. There will be days you slip back into old patterns, moments where the ghost of guilt feels all too real. But it will be different. You will now have a compass. You will know the way back. You are no longer the beautiful, empty room for others. You are the architect, the interior designer, and the cherished resident of your own soul. You have learned to furnish it with self-respect, to paint the walls with your own truth, and to install a door with a lock you are not afraid to use. And from this full, well-tended, and sacred space, the kindness you now offer the world is no longer a performance of worth. It is a genuine, sustainable, and radiant overflow of a heart that has finally learned to trust itself.